Well, the Prime Minister you saw there in Sydney today called a press conference in the inner southern suburb of Rosebery to try and push his latest housing plan. But the Sky News political editor, who joins me in a moment, Andrew Clennell, was there with some tough questions for the PM.
Is it really the time to be hitting businesses with your wave of IR reforms, increasing red tape and requirements on business? The Bill Kelty has reportedly said there's not enough imagination in your government. You've got polls showing your government at risk of losing. So do you fear a hung parliament where it would be even harder to get anything through? Do you expect a rate cut before the election? Have you overruled your minister? Because even with me, she didn't rule out the climate trigger being part of negotiations.
Andrew Clennell joins me now from Sydney. Well, I hate to say, I think he probably thought it was a doddle until you turned up, Andrew. He thought that Canberra press gallery crowd are a long way away from Rosebery. But you pressed him on a range of subjects. Do you feel like you got any answers? Well,
he answered them. I think the government is in need of...
Did you get an answer? Did you get an answer?
Let's not get into that, Peter. What I will say is the government is in need of a plan. You know, if I was running a coalition ad campaign now, I'd say Labor has no plan when it comes to the economy. Their only plan is hope for a rate cut. And I think that's why they're in the situation they're in. They announce a few things, but you could argue their IR reforms aren't great for productivity and don't help the current problem. You could argue they could have cut spending more. I'm starting to think maybe even put us into recession. I know that sounds crazy, because we still have low unemployment, but they could have done that, and then out the other side, nearer the election, inflation's come down, rates come down. Now we're sort of in this death of 1,000 cuts or death of 100 no rate cuts, I guess.
We're wedged.
And that is problematic if inflation hangs around at 3.5. So, you know, Bill Kelty's got a bit of a point when he says some imagination's needed, and I've been saying for a while, including to you, some risk is needed. That's the big thing that's needed, and I'm not sure that this week's display that we can't get anything through helps. Now, they're putting this up because they want to say, look, if you think it's bad having a Senate that doesn't pass these things with the Greens in charge, don't do it in the lower house. Don't give us a hung parliament. We need to get an agenda through, including to help on housing. But the problem is when you do that, it also backfire because it makes you look a bit helpless and a bit impotent. And I feel that is a bit of the impression of this week. They've come with this strategy to say, look, the Senate, the Coalition, the Greens, they're the no-alition, they're against change, they're against housing change to get more people in housing. But I think ultimately you look like impotent if you can't get things through.
Well, I think you also risk with those sort of strange bedfellows is if everybody's against you, and now you've got even Bill Kelty coming out against you, it's quite possible that your strategy's wrong. You're amplifying your critics. You pushed him pretty hard on the issue of a double dissolution. Let's have a listen.
You could go to a DD though, but you probably won't go to a DD because it wouldn't be a great result for you, would it?
Well, wait and see.
He sort of left it on the table. Was that just foxing though? Do you think he's serious?
Yeah, it's foxing because the polls where they are at least, I mean, maybe they'll improve, especially if there's rate cuts, but where they are, a double dissolution would only help the coalition and the front bench in the Senate. It wouldn't assist the government. So there's no point doing it. Another aspect to it is you need a bill voted down 3 times, right? So I believe the Greens are going to move tonight or tomorrow for this Help to Buy legislation vote to be pushed out to November 26, and my sources tell me the coalition will back that. So that sort of negates the amount of time that you'd need for enough no votes on a piece of legislation to pull the trigger. So it's kind of academic. If he had have said, no, I don't want a DD though, I kind of trapped him a bit there, Peter, I must admit. He would look weak. He would look like he was conceding the election. So I don't think he had many options but to suggest, yeah, well, we could do that.
Yeah, it's just twice, I've got to say, twice in 90 days on the notice paper between the ballots on the legislation for the trigger. Hey, you made the point, and I think this is very telling of internal politics in Labor. You said he has pulled rank on Tanya Plibersek, ruling out this talk we heard last week about some sort of climate trigger being inserted in the EPA legislation. Give me a read on the internal politics of Labor and the Labor left in Sydney at the moment.
Well, I don't think you'll ever hear Anthony Albanese chastise Tanya Plibersek or at all. Not in a cabinet forum, not in any forum in government. But do I think they're seeing things on the same page at the moment? No, I do not, because there's the gold mine in Orange and now there's this. So has he actually intervened here to make it more forceful there'll be no climate trigger? Yes, he has. Now, one argument put to me today is Tanya Plibersek's foxing with the climate trigger to try and get the coalition to vote for the legislation. I'm not so sure about that, because she wouldn't deny to me today that she had discussed it with the Greens, or her office had. It's a pretty simple thing to deny. And in interviews with me, and I think a press conference or interviews with others, she hadn't ruled out chucking a climate trigger in there. I think she is to the left of parts of the government on the environment, Tanya Plibersek. And look, she's a person of principle, good luck to her. But a lot of the positions that she takes could be difficult politically for the government, especially in somewhere like Western Australia. So, yeah, I definitely think he's probably overruled her on this one, but that's a Prime Minister's right, isn't it, Peter?
Absolutely. Hey, what about the reports today that the coalition angry that Labor's given funding to groups who have links to people who have praised the October 7 terror attacks that made derogatory comments about homosexuality and women's place in society? The grants were part of the $50 million federal grants program designed for religious organisations to invest in security to protect against violence. A bit like the visas coming out of Gaza, it doesn't seem like they didn't meant much checking into the background of these organisations.
Yeah, and you can point the finger sometimes at the department for that, or maybe the statements came after the grants, but the coalition and the Australian have obviously dug them up, and it is a damaging story. You know, you don't want people saying horrific things getting taxpayers' money. So, but I think another interesting aspect to this whole thing, and we can see why Labor wants to keep the Muslim groups on side, because as well as, you know, not alienate Israeli people in this country, is borne out in the New South Wales local government elections, where the Greens got quite a swing in Western Sydney. And Peter, you would know that is not a natural constituency for the Greens, right? So they normally get their vote in inner city areas, and that has to be, in my view, linked to the Palestine issue. So that's a real day. I mean, Labor's already has to fight the Liberal Party in Western Sydney. It's now got these pro-Palestinian candidates who we know are going to run, Muslim Voice or whatever you like to call it. Add on top of that pressure from an increased Greens votes, the preferences may come to Labor, or they may not in the force that they have previously. And you see why Western Sydney is going to be a battleground in this election. And bizarrely, one of the reasons for it is a war thousands of miles away.